Hello, welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. Truly the biggest league in the world, so big that the whole league is probably going to Huddersfield. I don't know. Eventually, the takeover is happening, people. Just go ahead, be ready for that. A lot of little housekeeping stuff to take care of, but then we will be talking about your favorite teams if they're below the playoff line, because we realized we weren't talking about the bottom teams too much because we don't have time to talk about all of the teams. So this is going to be an episode of not just talking about the teams below the playoff line, but why you should have hope in your team. If we can find it. We'll see. John, is there hope for those fans at all?
I think there's hope. I've made an argument. I've got little notes on why there should be hope for everyone. It's less convincing for some compared to others, but we're going to try.
I'm proud of you. And speaking of being proud of someone, Alan, I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
Not only for your Twitter post that we told people to check out, but also for just being here. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thanks. The weirdest response was the Phoenix Rising team account was liking it. It was interesting. It must have been like one of the admin accidentally signed in to the Phoenix Rising Twitter and then was like, whoops, but didn't want to take it back. The response was great. That's what I was kind of hoping for, is to be open and share that it's all right to talk about who you are and what you stand for. And I've talked about mental health as well on this podcast, and just being vocal and being kind of sharing those things to let other people know that it's all right if you are feeling that way or you are that way. And find your people, find your spaces that are going to be supportive, and continue to be you. And that's what's important. And hopefully somebody saw that and got that from that. And so before we go into all of the teams that are not doing well, things are going well here. I'm home today, so that's great as well. It's been nice. And I got my record collection behind me, so I'm happy.
Love it. Your place looks a lot more cozy than mine, which you would think by now we would be moved in, but no, we're not. And I can't wait for it until we're finally moved in and we have to move out again, because that's everywhere I've ever lived. But yeah, so look, we have a long show ahead of us, and just because I don't want the accusations, of course, the Birmingham fan doesn't want to talk about Memphis being good. John forced it down my throat of reminding me that the guy from Birmingham is very good at soccer and plays for stupid Memphis, and Stephen Glass is good at soccer. Whatever. John, I just want to hear you talk about it because I'm going to throw up.
Hello and welcome into the USL Tactics Show, where today I want to talk about Memphis 901's Knight Pickering, a teenage star on the wing who's filling in the gap that the team had in their scoring in the wake of the Philip Goodrum transfer. He started on the right wing, specifically against Louisville City in their most recent matchup, but he hedged much higher than his opposite number on the left, as you saw on the graphic. Casiedeu was much more of a ball carrier on that opposite side, whereas Pickering was liberated to get high up between the wingbacks and between the center backs. Look at the run he makes here. He's diving into the center of the pitch, probing for space when he sees a gap where the center back is not paying attention. This, for someone as young as him, is unbelievably impressive. In this instance, however, you're seeing the height that Pickering is providing out wide, the way that he is able to stretch defense by standing at the far side, providing that width, but then right there, recognizing the moment to get inside and open up the overlap from Reece Buckmaster at the right. Pickering is so impressively able to engage in this team's offensive system. Here, he's cutting in once again, getting onto that left foot to play the ball over to a teammate, and then he's crashing into goal once more. This is just so impressive from someone like Pickering, and that finish into the top corner is truly unbelievable for a first-timer. That's his 4th goal of the season, and he's got 2 assists to boot. It's so impressive for someone his age, which is a point I keep repeating, but it bears repeating. Memphis really did have questions, and the way that Pickering, as you're seeing there, is able to pick up the ball, distribute, and contribute to these opportunities is just sublime. He's strong in transition, he's strong in the final third, and his preternatural sense to hold up his passes, wait to make moves until the defense has committed, is powering this Memphis team, powering their 4-2-3-1, and making them a real threat to go the distance in the Eastern Conference this season.
I saw it. I saw it. I know. I won't lie. That last pass that you showcase on there blows my mind. I have no idea how he pulled it off. I mean, and it honestly is. It's incredible seeing how far up they've come after a really bad start, and then turning it around, and that talent finally looks like what it's supposed to look like.
There are times when I do the tactic show and I feel like, okay, I'm making some decent points. And then it was more like I'm just seeing clips of Night Pickering and he's really good and I can't believe he's 18 and just saying that over and over again. But it kind of bears repeating that what he's doing, the intelligence he shows, and the way that he fits into a lot of different roles within that team has just been invaluable. And it's the reason why they were able to move Philip Goodramon and get in Rodrigo da Costa, somebody who fits with the new look. So he's great, and this team is for real.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, they're not out of the playoff spot, so we can't really talk about them. But I think Lou City might be wondering like what is the upside because they're struggling right now to see where it is. But we also know the talent that's there, so I think they'll be perfectly fine. Whether it's because of or in spite of Glass, you know, I don't know. I think at some points talent really does just take over. Um, but even then, I mean, it's not like you can say Pierman was the fix all because it's not going too hard right now in Charleston. So you can't just say Pierman was the cause of all success. They have a lot of talent and, he's managing it well. But hey, there's some other clubs that have a lot of talent but aren't really showcasing it right now. One of the clubs, and we're going to start off with this one, is the one that is sitting at the very bottom by just a point, is the Las Vegas Lights, which I was very bullish on coming into the season because I thought they would be pretty good because I liked the high-end talent that they had. And then it didn't get off the line, but they've also, every time I watch the Lights game, it looks a lot better than I thought it would, which always blows my mind that they look better than I think. I mean, drawing 6 times, 1 win gives them 9 points, which if you're thinking drawing 6 times, that's a lot, isn't it? I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's tied for the most with like 2 other teams with like RGV and San Antonio. The difference is that San Antonio wins when Las Vegas loses. So, hey, your Bryce upside, if you're a Las Vegas fan, is just turn some of those draws into wins and you're shooting up the rankings, right?
No, I think that's a fair argument, and it's one that I'm going to be making for a couple of teams across this exercise. Las Vegas is pretty much just one defensive mistake a game away from really turning some of these even results into things that you could hang your hat on. I think Isidro Sanchez has shown a lot of flexibility in how he sets up that attack. You mentioned it from the top, Kaler, that there really is some good high level talent here. Names like Kubo Torres, Emmanuel Ledesma are going to steal the show realistically just because they've done it in the USL. But I'm thinking about Preston Tabordataka, who is so quick and adds so much. Andrew Carlton is kind of having a renaissance right now. Like he's the beating heart of what they do offensively week in and week out. I like Justin Ingram as a creator in that midfield. There are enough pieces, and you see them in a diamond, you see them in more of like a 4-3-3. In that last game, Sanchez threw on a speedy winger at halftime to mix up the game. There are ideas here, and it's just making sure that you don't have that one mistake. So I think Vegas, I know I make fun of you for thinking they were going to be good, but there really are moments where they seem at least halfway decent, right?
I mean,
Yeah, they're. I was looking up like their average player age is 22, and that's with Kubo Torres, who's 30. And so I think that speaks to kind of the hopefulness of the season is we've seen some teams back in the MLS 2 days where they were young and you go on a little bit of a roll and all of a sudden you're hanging out by the bottom of the playoff race. And this team could very much make that turn as far as getting some of those younger players experience, and then that turns into those draws turn into wins, and then all of a sudden, like I said, they go on a run of a couple games and then they're back into 8th place, which they're not that far out of, right? The West is a little bit wild right now. What is it, 8 points, and they have a game in hand on Phoenix. And so like, so you're talking about like 2 or 3 weeks, you can go on a pretty decent run with the way that Orange County, Phoenix is hitting some skids. And you might be pushing for that 8th place. So that's where I'm looking for Vegas to improve on. It is saying a lot when Carlton's kind of your best player, but he's definitely tried to make it. I mean, there is an improvement over last year, but last year he was kind of the bench guy and coming in spots here and there. So I tend to agree with that. Lights would be better without Kubo. I think Orange County had that same point last year. Is Kubo Torres maybe not the best player for Orange County last year, but I've seen him put in a couple goals and important ones.
I think the thing is that they've been very discerning in how they've used Kubo. Like, he's not guaranteed a starting spot, and that's wise. It's really been obvious that Pato Batelafaz does what he does with a little bit more consistency, just given the fact that Kubo hasn't been a volume goal scorer since probably a decade ago. So I think I respect, and again, it's just speaking to the fact that Sanchez knows what he's got in this roster, tries to apply it. You can't hear any commentary about it on the games, nor see the score bug when you're trying to see what the time is, but the Lights are trying at a minimum.
I mean, something I just want to throw out there. Can I just throw out the teams that they have lost to?
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, when I tell you that they have, a win over Phoenix, which people are like, well, Phoenix bad, right? Which people love to take jabs at because they were the loudest voice ever since Cincinnati left, and they became the big villain, especially if they're a team out west, right? I mean, they lost to Miami when Miami suddenly figured it out and then kind of forgot how to figure it out. That was when Miami just had their big offensive explosion. They've lost to Charleston, they've lost to San Antonio, they lost to Pittsburgh, and they lost to Monterey Bay.
Not only that, but these teams, when they were in, like Charleston's been up and down, but Vegas played them when they were hot. Vegas has played everybody when they are sizzlingly red hot.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm getting at, is that these teams that I'm saying they lost to, barring Miami, you're saying that these teams are beating anyone on their day, right? And heck, Pittsburgh, San Antonio, those kind of clubs, they're beating everyone anyway. That's not like that's not a shocking statement. And so I think it's not really a reflection of Las Vegas more than it's just their schedule has been really hard to begin the season and they just catch everybody at the wrong time. But look, we could really talk about I could talk about Las Vegas all day long. Someone else I have talked about ad nauseum has been Hartford. I'm not going to say it, so I'm not going to. Hartford,
I'll say it for you.
Hartford has made a lot of questionable decisions, and they have an incredible attack if they wanted it. But just like we said preseason, their attack wasn't the issue last year. Their attack was always really good. They were losing in shootouts because they didn't have the defense to keep up with it. And when their attack wouldn't score, they get blown out. This year, defensively, they've been a little better, but the people who they've been playing in goal have not been living up to what they should be. So, what is the upside for Hartford? For me, I think they're taking the right step with Joe Rice in net. I think he creates some better chances for them. But in all reality, I think just I think you have to maybe play a more defensive system and say we can't just outscore everybody.
Well, and I think that's part of what is promising is that Hartford started pretty disastrously. Richard Sanchez, I'll say the name, was a big deal in why he's got the worst goal save above expected in the USL. So moving on to Rice in these past 2 games, both of which have been much better draws, has naturally had an effect. But I think defensively, moving Tristan Hodge into that number 6 spot in the midfield has been a big deal for them. He's a real stabilizing presence there. He lets them have a little bit more freedom to kind of roam and rove on the wings. So then you add in that X factor of, okay, you've got a lot of talent, but the offense still hasn't been clicking. Enter Edgardo Rito, all league fullback for Oakland last season, into the double digits in terms of goals and assists. For my money, probably the best attacking wingback that you can get in the league right now. And you essentially trade him for peanuts. No offense to Jesse El Cedeno, who has potential. So recently, even before the trade, they had been experimenting with Matt Sheldon on the right wing, kind of flanking a youth prospect at wingback. All of a sudden, that's Sheldon and Rito on one side. That's a really good attack. Alva Samo is getting healthy. You can see the pieces falling into place for this team that really is not far out of a very, very tight bubble in the East.
Yeah, that was going to be my addition to Hartford is some positive moves in the right direction, but also I think a lot of the teams in the East are the same message of you're 3 points out of a playoff spot, and it's nice to see Hartford trying to make those moves to make that happen, but it's just going to bring more competition to that bottom of the East right now. That is, I want to say wide open, but clearly they're scoring as many goals as kind of that bottom half of the East. It's just their defense is letting in too many, and their goalkeeper were letting in too many. So I had some similar points on that one for Hartford is, solidify the back line a little bit, play a little bit more consistently, which they've been doing. And they have a game in hand on Tulsa. And so they could very well easily move up to 8th before someone even listens to this podcast.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and we're going to go on to League One and we're going to rattle off a couple League One teams, right? Because there's more teams that are outside the playoffs for League One than there are for the championship. So, that's where we're going to start. And we're going to start off with Crane Kick's own Tyler Lexington Luther. Hey, by the way, he had an incredible interview that you need to go listen to. But his own Lexington Sporting Club. And this is a team that I've been fairly bullish on because I like the talent they brought in. I think that who they have there are the right pieces. And this is kind of the same thing that we've talked about before, where they flip some of these draws that they've been getting, especially recently, right? 3 draws in a row. They maybe get a defensive play, get rid of the defensive mishaps, maybe get a couple more goals because, admittedly, they've been struggling for goals at times. Maybe that's where you get a little bit of a flip there. And Lexington's back in it because, they have guys that I really, really like. And not for nothing. Amal Knight and Amal Knight's been one of the best keepers in the league this year, who numbers won't like him because the defense hasn't been amazing, but he's been incredible.
Yeah, you mentioned that interview that Tyler did, and I think the subject of the interview, Charlie Matchell, is a real reason why this team has a chance. It's rare for somebody in the championship or League One to have the ability to just spray a diagonal pass, spray a ball over the top in the way that he does from very deep lying positions. I don't want to invoke an MVP finalist like that, but it's very Aaron Malloy-esque.
Yeah.
The thing for Lexington has been finding those goals so far. They've tried a couple of forwards there. They've not really had success. All of a sudden, Ates Diouf, somebody who the San Antonio contingent of the listenership will know somewhat well from his stint in the Texas USL sides. He's someone that you didn't really think of as a striker in the past. He could play certainly in more of a number 10 type spot, but he's really coming on strong for Lexington. So you've got at least one creator, you've got at least one scorer, and I'm with you on Amal Knight. you've got a spine there to at least start climbing up this table and turn those draws into wins.
Yeah, particularly as of late, I think that Northern Colorado draw is a pretty strong indication of some moving forward. The fact that they called Ibris a Pelican and got away with it, I think is also a really strong indication of some future success for Lexington, that they avoided that curse. I think any team's first year, they're going to struggle for an identity at the beginning. And, I'm hopeful for Lexington fans that things are starting to point in the right direction. Not too many shutouts. There's only 2 games that they didn't score a goal in. So that's also pretty solid, especially when we talk about some other teams in the championship and their lack of scoring. I think the bottom of League One is going to be an interesting place to see how many teams can. And there's only 6 teams that make it, so it makes it much more difficult than the championship. And so maybe not as much hope at the bottom of League One for that instance, but their home form is pretty decent. They just got to clean up on the road a little bit, and there could be a good run in them yet.
Another guy for Lexington that I am completely in love with, and like Chicago House, he was incredible, was Selwyn Kim. He's really good. He's only getting like 30, like 40 minutes a match, but when he comes on, I like what I see out of him. And he's a guy that's a center forward by trade, kinda, but I like him a lot as like a deeper line player that can really just spray the ball around. And I think if he got it more into the mix, I think he would be a good one for them moving forward. Let's move on a little bit higher up into the table, but we are going down into the valley, and it's not of just League One. We are going to Central Valley, and they are sitting in 11th, where they they came out and announced players, kinda, and they've been getting a lot of shtick, and for good reason. But they've gotten a couple results. They've gotten some good stuff. They get the win over Tormenta. They get the win over Ford Madison, which Ford Madison fans were kind of down bad over. You can look at the penalty and say whatever, right? But this is a team that has some recent results that, hey, we don't even know how long these guys were able to train together with preseason. So maybe if they start clicking a little bit more, hey, maybe we're good.
Yeah, and this was a club, given what they did in the offseason, very clearly the argument you were going to make for them was you're going to stick Ozzy Ramos at the base of that midfield. He's going to clean up everything. And then Jose Carrero Garcia is going to be the real creative presence. And he missed the start of the season with an injury. He had 6 assists last year in Chattanooga. Now he's back. He's finally on the board with 1 in their last game. Getting him going along with what they're getting from Alex Cerritos, that's a big deal. Lijev is always going to be there as an outlet who's going to pick up some goals. I think getting Carrera Garcia as the guy who's going to draw eyes in the midfield is a big deal for them, and you're seeing the payoff already result-wise. I think they also, maybe you pull off kind of a Tucson thing where just the havoc of those West Coast road trips and those late starts can do you good. I mean, I kind of laugh in saying it, but it's not untrue in this league that so few teams have to go out west.
Yeah, I think the positive here is just kind of the most recent run of form, but this also shows particularly, I think in both League One and in the championship, where runs are going to either make or break your season. Central Valley kind of going on a pretty terrible run during April and into May, giving up goals and not really scoring, collecting red cards, like they were cryptocurrency before the big crash. And they did again against Richmond Kickers. I mean, this is a team that sometimes I think gets in their own way. But a really nice showing against Tormenta. The win against Ford Madison again points toward a good direction. So there is hope there, right? Like, hey, we might be out of this run of form, but if they win 4 in a row instead of lose 4 in a row or draw those 4, I think we're talking about a little bit different picture for them. But that was a really tough stretch for them, and it really put them behind in the league. So there's hope to be had for them. They're 6 points out with the game in hand. So if they win, it's 3 points. So they're pretty close to touching that bottom playoff.
I think something else for them is going to be a little bit more tactical consistency. I think people make a little bit too much of a big deal, including me, about just system shape, right? Because teams can come out in a 3-5-2, which I mean they like to do. Central Valley does, and then they can come out in a 4-4-2, right? Your most standard, most basic system that you can imagine, and they're essentially the same. They are basically the same thing depending on how the ball moves, whether they want to go out wide, whether they want to spread it through the middle, how wide they want to get, right? They can be essentially the same thing. The shape doesn't matter. But for Central Valley, it has. They tried going directly down the middle. There was a couple of matches where I don't remember who they were playing exactly, but I remember it just felt like their wingers and their wing backs didn't touch the ball once because they were like goalkeeper, center back, center mid, striker. They just straight down the spine. And then there were other matches where they were like, that didn't work. How about we do the opposite? Goalkeeper, wing back, winger, striker. And it was like there was no consistency. But these last couple of games, they've stuck with this 3-5-2 or 3-5-1-1, whatever you want to call it. And it seems to be a little bit more solidified in what they're actually doing. So I maybe just tactical familiarity will do them a lot of good. Moving on to the Chattanooga Red Wolves, who, hey, Coach Ziggy was getting a lot of heat early. But I mean, honestly, the biggest plus for them is that he wears the scarf every game, even when it's like 90-some degrees. So good on you, Zig. I mean, a full-on suit with the big like wool scarf. I mean, that's a man's man right there, I guess. This is a Chattanooga team that was gutted from the year before. All their attacking players were gone, and they were kind of left with, we didn't really know. They have switched around goalkeepers with Jerez, and then I think it's Aviles, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Aviles, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Name's not my thing. But there was a guy for me that he's not going to get a whole lot of love with goals or get a whole lot of assists, but it's been kind of this like left wing back. The big one is Aaron Lombardi for me. He's been a powerhouse for them, and he's super consistent. And for this Chattanooga side that has gone up and down throughout the season, you kind of always can rely on him. And the moment that other players can come to his level of consistency, I think is going to be a big push for this club going forward.
Yeah, Lombardi's got the second most chances created, I think, on the team right now, and he's doing that from a defender's spot. Like, that's a huge deal. They were on that 5-game winless streak that finally they broke it, which is just big for the momentum, big for getting out of the morass that they're in. I think Rapapa Mensah getting some goals is nothing but good as well. He was struggling a little bit just to get fit, get into the squad early on. I think he's riding 4 starts in a row now. He was in the team of the week last season after a goal, or rather last week after a goal and an assist. If you get Lombardi doing that creation thing, Mensah scoring a little bit, and you're galvanizing the team by finally getting off the schneid, there's a real argument, just given how streaky and how even League One is, that they could rip off a couple results and get right back in there.
I agree.
Cool. I love that. So let's go ahead and jump back to the championship after we, rattled through some of those. And I want to talk about RGV. And hey, listen, all the San Antonio fans are licking their chops because they're thinking this is going to be the shortest segment of all of them. There's nothing good going on here. Look, I think this team has some talent. I think that there is stuff that they can hold onto. The scoring hasn't been there. They're conceding goals. It doesn't look great. But I hate to place so much recency bias, but I mean, the result against Miami is a pretty good one. They proved not only could they score goals, which they hadn't really proved prior to that, they also proved that they can, mount a comeback. They can show a little gumption and get a result when it seemed like it had been lost, and they hadn't done before, or at least just this entire season anyway. They're another one of those teams that, hey, you flip a couple of those draws into wins. They're tied with San Antonio, with Las Vegas, with the most draws. If they can learn how to flip a couple of those, it's there. I think the biggest thing and I know this is supposed to be the hype up and everything like that, but I mean, a lot of the guys they brought in was supposed to be their impact guys they're getting older, and I hate to be that blunt, but they are. And whenever you're playing on the widest pitch of all time, maybe they don't make the same runs that, they might have when they were younger. So, get some youth in there, get some, young MLS loans and flip some of those draws to wins, and you are right back in.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the core of what they're doing with that roster right now, yes, in the midfield, if you're thinking about like Jose Francisco Torres in particular, he's, I mean, ancient, let's be real. But I mean, Wilma Cabrera Jr., who's mainly been their striker this season, Ricky Ruiz, Frank Nadarce, and Eric Kinsner at back. They're a pretty young side that has struggled to figure it out just given the weight of the absences early on. Last weekend against Miami was the first time all season long that Christian Pinzon was on the bench. He's somebody that came in on loan last year, very late in the year, and he had 10 combined goals and assists in like not even 1,000 minutes played. He was rampant for them, and he was, for me, the reason they got into the playoffs. So you get him in the mix. You build on what you did against Miami, where Frank Nadarce was sort of this hybrid right back, center back role, depending on how aggressive they needed to be in the phase of the game. I think there are ideas here. I think Wilma Cabrera shoots himself in the foot by backing off of a really strong high press that consistently gets this team good chances. So commit to that. Commit to the fact that you can be a young and fast and creative side, and some of the results are going to turn out. Like, this isn't the most talented team in the USL. No one is going to claim that, but there are real strengths here. The roster, accidentally or not, is built to play a high tempo pressing game, and they can do things because of it. They've done it 2 straight seasons.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with the way they played in San Diego. That was a kind of a stunning win that I don't think anyone saw coming, and I think it just shows that there is a there that can be dangerous, and when you have a fan base that stretches as far as Deutschland, you got a pretty fun team to watch. Like I said, I was really impressed with the way they played. The biggest deficiency is, they've scored like the least goals in the Western Conference, tied with Vegas and Orange County. And when you have that kind of statistic, it's hard to be successful in the West. When there's tons of teams scoring, multiple goals, you're going to have to keep up with them. And, they kept up with the flying Kyle Murphys most recently. So I think that there is something there. And, they're not that far away from touching distance to the playoffs. And I would like to see RGV throw a little bit of a wrench in there and make this a little bit fun run in for this toward the end of the season.
I mean, I don't like to play too much traditionalist because, I mean, we can do that all the time. We did it all of last year with Phoenix. I mean, pretty much until 2 weeks ago in the season last year, we're like, well, Phoenix could get in. And if they get in, you never know. You never know, right? But, I mean, these last couple of years, I mean, RGV just kind of does it. They just sort of show up. Them and Oakland seem to be kind of cut from the same cloth of, we're not going to care. And then at the very end, we're going to make a run. And then we're going to beat somebody big in the playoffs because that's just what we do. Which I respect that out of them. I think a big difference in these last couple of games that I don't know about is like they have Marinaccio, and then they have Derek. Derek gets dropped after the Tampa Bay game, which I felt was a little harsh. But Marinaccio, he's also been a guy who Am I pronouncing that wrong? I probably am.
It's close enough. I mean,
Sure. I'm sorry.
it's a backup goalie that no one has heard of. Like, no, I mean, I'm sure I feel bad, but like, there's a lot of USL players out there.
There is. He's bounced around though. He was with Tucson last year. He was with Hartford before that, and he's a guy that seems to be close. And I liked what he was doing in these matches. He was making big saves, but this is kind of another thing where I think they almost get the Hartford treatment from me. I think better goalkeeping play, and you're in a lot more matches, and that seems really straightforward and just like, hey, if you just have a best goalkeeper in the league, you might be decent. Which can hold some weight. I mean, we're going to talk about Detroit City later. But I don't know.
Derek's actually dead even in terms of what you'd get out of him versus expectation. RGV is famously terrible about injury announcements, so I'm wondering if he didn't take a knock at some point. I mean, if you just get on RGV Twitter and look for like any signs of life, you might think they folded in any given week. It's
Do
a little
not
bit wild.
forget about Meme Monday. Do not.
I'm glad we're giving the spotlight. Yeah. Also, check out the fact that they are posting the worst memes on the internet every Monday with just random photos from training, and it's wonderful and beautiful.
I mean, it's definitely somebody up top that's like, we need to post something. How about we post some memes? And they're like, oh, we got it. And then they're like, no, not those memes, the other ones. And they're just sending them training photos. And it's just like, do something with this.
It's literally like the cycle of their Twitter account is, here's the lineup, here's 1 or 2 tweets about the result, Meme Monday, repeat. Like, it's kind of crazy. The social media guy is coasting.
I hope it's the owner. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, social media person, if you're working really hard. It's not personal if you're being held to hostage to this. But if you're not and you're willingly doing this, I'm so sorry.
Hire Deschanel.
Hey. Moving on, and I alluded to them, Detroit City. Look, I have a lot of belief in Detroit City because their defense is ridiculously good. Nate Steinwasser, his death was greatly exaggerated. I could ramble and rant and rave about Elvis Amo. Ooh, that's not the same person. Amu Mensah, Devin Amu Mensah. I'm struggling today. I'm sorry, Detroit City fans. And also Carroll is kind of been the stud that no one talks about, and I really don't know why.
He's so good. Matty Lewis has missed a ton of time, but he's great. Michael Bryant has stepped up. Michael Bryant, very much a jack of all trades. Their defense is right. Exactly. Hey, go back and listen to that Devin Amu Mensah for one of the best interviews he's ever done. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you speak to it. The defense is elite. Steinwasser, no matter how you slice it, is a top 2 or 3 goalie in the league without a single doubt. I think we've talked about the trade. The trade is going to be a big deal. In the game against Charleston, they saw Dominic Gasso, who's a teenage prospect, step up and kind of do what Tommy McCabe was doing. So they filled that in just internally with an academy kid. And in return, Brett Levis is out there on the left wing back spot. He hasn't played yet, but he's going to be a weapon. Dario Suarez just might be the answer. He's a constant 9-10 goal guy for a team that sorely needs the scoring. Maxi is Maxi. They're finally getting results. I'm buying in just because this is what Detroit did last year. Defense you to death, win enough games, 1-0 to get in there.
Yeah, and their most recent run has been a pretty tough road, right? You got Lou City, Miami, Sacramento, Tampa Bay, Tulsa, Tampa Bay, San Antonio, Legion, Charleston. Like, that's a pretty tough run with Minnesota mixed in there from the Open Cup. And so, like, yeah, they've only scored 7, but they've only let in 13. Like, they're going to start playing some teams that aren't like the top of their division soon. And I think Detroit City can end up being just fine. You know, Kayla, you highlighted the back end of that team, and that's what's going to win them games in some tough situations. But they've played a lot of really tough competition. I mean, Tulsa probably the worst out of those, and Tulsa's still a pretty pretty
playoff
decent
team.
Yeah. And so like if I'm Detroit, I'm not super worried yet. Because Steinwasser's going to steal you a couple points, and then all of a sudden you're right there at the bottom.
I mean, I don't know if this means anything to Detroit City fans, but I'm doing a road to glory on FIFA 20, and Ben Morris just won me Liga NOS. So I signed him from Ipswich, and he is unstoppable. So I don't know what that means, but it means something, and it means something to me. Up the Sporting.
Can I just go off on Ben Morris real
Go
quick?
off.
'Cause
Go off.
That was sort of the thing that like got some drama in the offseason, and was like they were iffy about him being healthy, which was or was not true. I heard conflicting things. The moral of the story with Ben Morris is that the guy can't hit the broadside of a barn with his shot. There's one or two times every single time out that he gets a clear one-on-one with the goalie, and he's not converted any of them yet. So, I mean, there's a reason that they just dealt for Dario Suarez, why Yazid Matthews is getting time over him, why they've experimented with that starting forward line a little bit. Morris isn't going to be the answer, but just given what they've added in the midfield, given O'Neal Fisher getting in there in the wingback spot, I'm liking what Detroit is selling right now, especially given the Eastern bubble where Tulsa, I know I'm higher than the rest of us probably, but Indy basically has two healthy defenders right now, and they still are so inconsistent. I'm just not sold on a lot of the East to stay ahead of what Detroit has momentum wise.
I don't know if this speaks on Detroit exactly, but last year they also traded for Mackie Jop from Legion, who I don't think he plays anymore. So I feel comfortable saying he might be the worst striker I've ever seen in my life. I'm sorry, Mackie. I'm really not. They kind of like a reclamation project. They do this seemingly a lot, and they bring in a reclamation project that says, hey, he hasn't produced, but what if he did? And, I hate to say that Ben Morris might be that this year, but I mean, that he might be. He's a guy who
He was
had
like a
so much potential.
23-year-old who never played because he was always hurt. Like, I get the argument, but man, I don't know why they decided that was going to be the guy they banked on as the number 9.
I think, doesn't Trevor James have strong connections to Ipswich?
Yeah, and it's also the fact that they had an empty wallet that
Yeah, so there we go. We got there. Moving on, we are going to jump over real fast to League One because I say real fast. There's a lot to talk about with this team. Union Omaha. You didn't expect them to be in 9th, but hey, Jay Mims goes missing. Do we know where he is? Is he okay? Is Mims okay? No, okay. I hope he's doing fine. But this is a team that if you loosely follow League One, if you ask, hey, how's Union Omaha doing? They would say, they're Union Omaha. They're probably top 4. No big deal. They are well out of a playoff race. And at times they have looked horrible. There's no way to really sugarcoat that. I mean, the match against Charlotte was that might have been one of my hardest watches I've ever seen. That might be one of the worst. I felt so sorry for Omaha. But that said, look, we talked about Nate Steinwasser and what he brings to this team. I mean, we'd be remiss if we just didn't say Nuhu, just broadly gestures to Nuhu and say he's really good. I don't know how he's even in the USL, let alone League One. He is just incredible. On top of that, I mean, this is, again, I don't like saying the whole, traditionally speaking, but traditionally speaking, they win or draw a lot. I guess that's also something they do. They are called Dramaha. But Meza is also a really good player who in his career has played everywhere. If you have ever thought of an offensive position, he's done it. And so while he is a true center forward, if you need him to be, he can also kind of go wherever you want him to. So if you bring in another player as a striker, you can stopgap him anywhere you want. And I think that you'll be very successful if you're Omaha. So I think you can just almost blindly say, get yourself an offensive piece or find you someone internally that can go up top and let's figure it out.
Well, you say that, but they've been putting Steven Dos Santos there, somebody who's been a consistent starter for the Rowdies and the Riverhounds in their playoff runs, and he's not producing. And I think the crux of my argument was sort of what you said of it's Omaha. They've got that core with Connor Doyle, with Metza, Nuhu, Luis Heel. There's so much talent on this team. And yes, League One is improving year in and year out, and you can't just rest on your laurels. But they brought in a lot of guys from playoff teams in the USL Championship. I think that they have a system that looks decent. I think that Nuhu has actually been mediocre by the numbers this year. He's sitting about 30th percentile in terms of goals saved above expectation. That's not going to last. That guy is going to be up near the upper echelons of League One for the rest of the season because he has those reflexes. He's got a very good reach and he's quick off his line. He's one of the best goalies out there, and he's going to save them goals when push comes to shove. Like, you can point to the experience, and I think that's a lazy argument, but in this case, it just holds true.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Omaha has going for them is some of the traditional teams that were like Omaha, where you were like, hey, how's Greenville? Hey, how's Tormenta? Like, they're also having not the best seasons. And so the door is very open for Omaha to put some stuff together to figure it out to get back into a playoff spot. Again, the 6 teams makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think Omaha is a team, like if you were making it on paper, like this is Football Manager, I think they'd be doing better than they are in real life. And it's just a matter of time before those names come together. Like you said, John, like if you look at the roster for this team, you'd be like, why is this team not performing? Why is this team where they are? Like the names themselves stand out. You're like, holy crap. So it's only a matter of time. Hopefully they put it together. They're kind of languishing a little bit, but yeah.
Moving on, we're going back to the championship now, and we're going to go to Orange County, where Orange County, you kind of look at the pieces and say, where are the results? I mean, again, this I don't want to just say look at player, but wildly gestures, Milanowski, right? Just say there he is. He will do the dang thing. But also, they finished, I think, last year, and he was still Golden Boot winner. He's going to do it whether you're good or not. He will always be good. And so this is where I kind of look again, and maybe I put too much like against goalkeepers at times. But I mean, Cropper and Shuttler have not been amazing. And I don't know what you do there. I mean, it's so easy to say, just go get another goalkeeper, but you can't just do that. That's not as easy as it sounds, or else every team would do it. I think another thing that would fix Orange County is like stop playing Villanueva at fullback. Let him be attacking like he wants to be. He's better there. At least in my opinion, that, or just figure out where Villanueva goes, because every time I watch them, he's either playing like right back or left back, and then he's going to be playing center mid, and now he's playing striker. Now he's playing winger. Where does he go?
Lately, it's nowhere. But
Well, true.
yeah, I'd love to get you on this, Alan, because I feel like you're closest to it.
It's just been super frustrating to watch this team. At the beginning of the season, I thought they made enough changes to make a difference, right? To support Milanowski, allow him to be the greatness that he is. Like some of the losses recently, it's literally a Milanowski goal away from either a draw and picking up some more points, maybe a win. I thought they looked pretty good against Sacramento. And you thought, hey, maybe they're starting to kind of figure out the system that's going to work for them. But it's just been consistently inconsistent. It's just been super frustrating to watch Orange County play. It feels like they're missing something. They fired their head coach again. That wasn't the solution. it's just been kind of languishing there since they won that star, and hoping they can maintain that San Antonio style of not give up tons of goals and win some 1-0 games with a guy like Olaski scoring the goal. But their defense just hasn't been there. The goalkeeper Rakowski goes to Phoenix, which I think is a huge loss for them. It's just been not great. I mean, you bring in guys that just are injured as well. Like, they've been missing some key pieces early on that really put them behind the 8 ball. And I think, with Orange County, it's just a tough one to watch at times, but they're not like bad. They're just not good enough to get it across the line, it seems.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the early stages of the Switchbacks game, some of the recent performances where it feels like this team is almost figuring it out offensively. Like, they're using those 3 central midfielders, they're possessing really nicely from the back, and then they just run out of ideas at a certain point. And it feels like whenever you start to build momentum, then it turns into we're chucking it long to Olaski. So I know I'm supposed to stay positive here, and I think if you can build off of the fact that Kyle Scott, Seth Kasipli, if you're throwing Brian Olaski either on the wing or in the middle, there's enough talent that when you get Andrew Fox back, let's say, you can really start to integrate that style that it felt like this team was trying to move towards in the offseason. I think Thomas Among has finally got into the lineup a little bit recently, which has been a good step for a talented player. Some of the youth is going to keep improving. I know Bryce Jamison has really been the breakout this year, even though I think people largely expected Correia Osundina to be that guy. He's been in and out of the team, so he could be a big addition. And you mentioned the goalkeeping, Kaylor. Richard Sanchez individually is the worst goalie in the league this season, but net, Orange County is the worst team because that Shuttler-Cropper duo has just been off their game. I'm looking for Cropper to make an improvement. I mean, this is a guy who had national team hype at one point. He was playing for Southampton for a stretch there. He was in MLS most recently. You fall down the ladder for a reason, but he got to the heights that he did because there is a talented goalie somewhere in the Cody Cropper package. That's a lot of reasons why this team could at least get closer to competence, and I'm just buying in on the talent argument, I guess.
Speaking of the talent argument, you said you were going to try to keep this one, that one positive. I want to try my hardest. I don't think there's a team I kind of hate more than Miami because they constantly have it all, but constantly doing nothing. And it makes me so angry because I'm going to tell you just all the names that they have available to them. I mean, look, they got Paco Craig, Stanley, Stegbers. They got Chapman Page. They got, Bolu Akinyode. They got Velo. They got Sorda, who's been incredible this year. They got Rivas. They got Kyle Murphy. That's every team's best 11 except for Miami because they make me really mad. And they've done this every year where they have a lot of talent and they don't seem to figure it out. And I wonder if them just kind of blindly, not even blindly, but just saying we are going with a 3-back because we have really talented center backs. I wonder if getting away from that and saying, hey, maybe this system isn't working and it hasn't worked for 3 years.
You mentioned all that talent. So much of it is focused in the attacking lines and that back line. And Akinyode is really the only central midfielder to do it. And based on that, which was an issue last season, they went out and they brought in Gabriel Cabral from League One, one of the best central midfielders box to box in that league. And I think he just got his first start all year in that RGV game where, say what you will about the defense, some of it was fluky, but offensively, they put up 3 goals for a team that has really struggled in build. Kyle Murphy felt like he was on. Mark Segbers was back in the team, and he's very much been in and out. They've struggled a bit with injuries, but not enough that I'm going to use that as an excuse. I think it's the talent argument again there, where they've had the very good defense by the eye test and by the expected goals. You can throw enough bodies on the field who are just upper echelon USL players and trust the process. Alternatively, if I'm going to make the kind of bittersweet argument, maybe they just move on from Anthony Pulis at some point, and that ends up being the thing that puts them over the top. So just drop that in there.
I did hear Jesse Marsh is looking for a job.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is a frustrating team as well when you watch them play. Like if you catch them on a good day, they're pretty fun to watch. They're a good team. They can score some goals. I think Kyle Murphy coming along recently is a good sign for them. He was really struggling and not finding anything close to the back of the net. And I think I made a comment again when they played Loyal, like, oh, here Kyle Murphy, he's been a goal scorer in the past, but he's really kind of struggling when he scored against San Diego, and I like kicked myself for saying it. But I think this is a team that runs hot and cold based on their talent, and this is a fun team to watch. So I would encourage people in Miami to go watch this team. It's going to be
there's no other star players to see in that city, so
not yet. So save your $500 and get a season ticket for Miami, the Miami FC, while you wait for someone else to show up. But it's a pretty fun team to watch. It's just got to be frustrating for actual supporters of Miami to watch the inconsistency and not being able to put it together. But this is a team like a lot of the other Eastern Conference teams where they're essentially tied for a playoff spot. And so just a slight uptick in form is going to get Miami over that hump, and maybe an Indy and maybe a Tulsa fallout. But Miami's still pretty competitive for a playoff spot. So I would throw that out there as some hope to, although Indy 11 picking up Sebastian Velasquez is a key pickup. So maybe not Indy 11, but I think there's a team that might fall out that Miami can take advantage of if they go on a little decent run.
And I'm going to be biased here because he did play for Legion 1 year, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I think that there's a real argument that Bolu might be the best center mid in the USL. And you can throw out other names, but I honestly think that if Bolu was playing for San Antonio, San Diego, Lou City, Tampa Bay, one of those teams that are actually good, people would be screaming his praises because he really is incredible. And so I don't know what that is to say other than Miami fans just watch him the entire time. Number 21, just follow him around because he is just an incredible watch.
Yep. One of the best number 6s there is in this league.
Let's go ahead and go to Greenville, where, hey, this is where you again can blindly say resume, tradition, they're always good, right? But it hasn't been working, and it works sometimes, and they got healthy, and then it looked really good, and then it all fell apart again. They got talent, they got guys that you believe in. I also, they have been working to get younger. I will say that it's not the same old man Greenville that we're kind of used to, but the guys that they rely on are still up in age a little bit. If I'm going to highlight anybody and say the rest of the season depends on this guy, it's someone that I thought could be the rookie newcomer of the year, and that's Daniel Wu. I am a big fan of Daniel Wu. I think that he is a quality center back that you can play in a 3-man back line, a 2-man back line. He's going to do you a job. He's going to be really solid defensively. He's a guy that I think, maybe Greenville struggles with, or I say a guy, this whole team kind of struggles with, because do they want to play the 3-man back line? Do they want to play the 4-man back line? And this is kind of the same thing that we've talked about with Central Valley, is that they change back and forth on how they want to play, and they're always experimenting, but they never let anything stick long enough to find out if it works. And I wonder if Hark's sitting there saying, hey, we're going to stick with this, win, lose, or draw. We are going to go with this system until we know for sure it does or it doesn't work. And I wonder if that would be a big help for this team.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I just, in kind of preparing for this exercise, was looking back at some of their lineups, and you hit the nail on the head that they're never bringing out the same back line between 2 or 3 matches in a row, which is hurting them at this point. So when they get that consistency, Greenville is known as a defense first team. Harks knows how to drill a defense and get them to stop opponents from scoring goals. And this is maybe the best Triumph offense we've ever seen. They're leading the entire League One in goals right now. Creatively in the middle, they've got Leo Castro, Coutinho, Devin Boyce. These guys have been somewhat in and out, but all of them are producing when they're in there. When you're spoiled for choice like that, that's a really big deal. And I know it's been the theme of League One, but Greenville has 4 draws in their last 5. Turned 2 of those into wins, and this is a completely different narrative for this team. So I think more than probably any of the League One teams that we've discussed, they feel the most likely to really rise up the table as we go along in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say win, lose, or draw. Lately, it's just been the loser draw for Greenville, and that's kind of unfortunate. And so, John, I agree. So we'll move on.
We're going to go ahead and go out west. And Carson, we're going to get to your question about Loudon very soon. They are going to be after New Mexico, who Zach Prince officially is announced as the assistant coach in New York Red Bull Academy. I mean, that whole thing, whatever they are. And he is officially their MLS coach. I didn't mean to say academy. I was just thinking like the Red Bull system in general. But they bring in a new guy who, hey, a little bit of pedigree to him, some big name. And so I want to leave the coach for John and Alan to talk about because I'm not as well versed in his career personally, but I think that there is a lot of talent when you look at attacking. And this is something we always said with New Mexico. They had all the attacking players you could ever want, but none of them ever seemed to score because they were kind of constantly rotating out and they had no idea which was their best 11. But I mean, they have really good players. Santi Moar, heard of them? They got, Portillo, really solid. They got, these guys like Chris Wehan, who's done it forever. Hurst. I mean, they have guys who can score. And I made this suggestion maybe it was last week. Give Ford Parker run. Tim Bacchus has been not great this year. And I don't know if that's because of poor defending along with it that's been making him look worse than he is. But maybe you stick with, Tim Bacchus with a new coach in town, and that's really the galvanizing the boys need. But also Ford Parker, guy from Albuquerque. This is a club that loves its community. Maybe give the community a little bit of love.
Yeah, so I just want to hit on the Eric Quill effect. He's the manager that they announced today. He's someone who managed North Texas in League One for 3 seasons when they were and still are the affiliate of FC Dallas. So when he was there, he was the guy who oversaw the final stages of development for, Ricardo Pepi, Ronaldo Damas. Yeah, right. Arturo Rodriguez. I mean, I could keep going on and on. This guy is for real and turning young players into people who can contribute at a professional level. What's more, he does so while playing a really positive, expansive brand of soccer. Pretty much always a back 4. They press in more of a 4-2-4 traditionally, is what he did in North Texas. But he's playing with tempo. He's really engaging you out wide. It's something that is very free flowing in a way that New Mexico has not done whatsoever. You can question if this roster is young enough and athletic enough to do what Quill wants out of a team, but at least I think he's going to put in the puzzle pieces to get this team on the right track going forward. New Mexico is pretty consistently a playoff side. They've got the roster that they should be a playoff side. So it wouldn't be a surprise if you get that new coach bounce. He fits that system and he brings in some of the academy kids and really gets them rolling. And I think that's the argument here for New Mexico.
Yeah, they're essentially a playoff team already. Like they have some games in hand. Their last 3 losses are San Antonio, El Paso, and Tampa Bay, who I would, they're the top of the West and East. So not like devastating that they lose to these teams. But I think New Mexico is probably like on a good day, definitely, up closer to the top half than the bottom half of the West, just in general. So it'll be interesting to see what Coach Quill can get out of them. And like I think that they're already right now playing on par with, you know, Monterey, Colorado Springs, and Phoenix. Like they're already there. And so if they can take another step forward, they're in the conversation to push for, you know, as high as fourth or fifth, right? Like in the next couple of weeks, like let alone over the course of the season. And so I believe in this New Mexico team that they're going to make the playoffs. They're probably like the least out of it in the USL right now as far as the West is concerned. I mean, the East is pretty wide open, but the West, I think New Mexico is very easily in that conversation of a playoff team.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to Loudon, where, hey, look, Loudon started off hot and they were the people's champion. They were who they were, and we were very excited. They bring in the Pegasus. We were like, this is Loudon's team. And then, you know, hey, the DC loans start rolling in, and that kind of was what it was. And we poked a little bit of fun at it. But I mean, I appreciate them for doing what they can, right? Like they take advantage of the resources they have. I wish more clubs would take more advantage of loans. So good on them for that. Um, I understand that I am a bit goalkeeper obsessed, and I've mentioned that a few times now. So I'm going to avoid that for just a second. But Tommy Williamson is one of the more exciting players that you can watch. I wish his goal scoring was better, but he is just an exciting player to watch. I mean, look, Zach Ryan is just an incredible player, and he's really exciting to watch. This is a team that when they're running hot, they look good and they can score against anybody. I said it before, they're too dumb to be afraid. Like they're too young to care, and they still kind of have that about them. The thing I was going to mention with the keeping was I don't think it's a coincidence that Jackman has been in all of their best matches. Faro is he's fine. He was not great in Charleston, and he's been not great in Loudon. Whenever things were going wrong for Charleston and Loudon, I would hardly say that he was the primary issue, but he was a part of it, right? And now Jackman's been starting. All the matches he starts, they play dang well. And a lot of that to me is I really like his distribution, how he passes the ball around. I enjoy just seeing him what he does. He's a decent shot stopper. And I think if you stick with him in net, he's a young guy. He needs to take his lumps, but when he plays, he does all right.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, just the ups and downs with this roster where they started so well, then all of a sudden Samake goes up to DC and it throws them off. Then you're selling Armanakas a couple weeks back. Finally, last week, again in that Tulsa game, it felt like Ryan Martin got the balance right again. Abdulzane was out there at that left back spot, looking fantastic, carrying the ball. Jackson Hopkins, who for good reason is really one of the hyped up players in that DC development system, looked like he was up to the level for arguably the first time in a Loudon kit. And doing so on that right wing spot, replacing Armanakas and that ability to cut inside and invert, was really crucial to getting Ryan and Williamson clicking again. They've got a ton of talent in the attack, much more than we've seen in the past. You're getting, I mean, a workman-like effort from Khalil and Medkar on the left side there. They've got enough pieces. They showed early in the year that there's really something here. And by the way, on the balance of the season, ups and downs, they've got a positive expected goals. So Loudon, even by the numbers, is a team that we should maybe put a little bit more trust into.
Yeah, I know they mentioned the run of Birmingham, Charleston, Tampa Bay, Louisville, but then after that it's Detroit City, Orange County, Miami, Memphis 901, San Diego, and Vegas. Like that stretch of into July, beginning of August, like they could do some damage there and really rise up the East, right? Orange County not playing super well. If you beat Detroit City and Detroit City, or at least pick up a point, that's, you know, you're competing against that bottom half. And then, you know, against Vegas, I think they can do some pretty good damage, and that's where they're going to need to. in their season, that's where I think they're going to make or break whether or not they can sneak into that 8th spot, is kind of that run of late July to early August to see how many points they can pick up.
Yeah, I mean, I want to believe in this Loudon team. They have a lot of guys that I like. I love when teams just say we're going to let the young guys eat, win, lose, or draw, and it's kind of what makes Loudon fun. So I hope they stick with it. Keep with Jackman in goal. I mean, he's a fun young player. He's going to take his lumps, but every player needs to do it at some point. So there's that. Now it's the last team of this episode, if I'm counting correctly. South Georgia Tormenta, last year's champions, which if you remember, if you follow the USL show or just League One, Tormenta was bang average until like the middle of the season. And then, especially the end of the season, they were as hot as it can get. And everybody kind of said if they make the playoffs, they're going to be an issue. This year, I feel largely the same. Last year, if you don't remember, they could have finished in the regular season as high as second or missed the playoffs altogether on the final day. That was kind of the chaos from last year. And then they obviously finished, I think, second, and then they go on to win it all. Look, Sterling is that dude. He is ridiculous. It's not fair. And he hasn't been playing all the time, right? He only has I think it's 3 matches played this year, and he scored in one of them. He's still incredible. Their back line has been, which was the star of their team last year, because I started being amazing. But if you said what made Tormenta so great, it's that back line. They lost their center back pairing, and then, they keep getting hurt. And so it seems like they haven't had a lot of solidity going on in the back line. I think as this year goes on, as guys get healthy, as they stop getting suspended for whatever reason, I think that this is a team that is dangerous, will make a run, and they're going to be terrifying.
Yeah, and just clarifying on Sterling, this is a player who was elite last year. He's got that, Tottenham Youth Academy DNA in him. He played one game in like a cameo appearance, but then he started finally in these last 3, and he's got 2 goals. That's going to be a trend for this Tormenta team. They've allowed the second most goals in the league right now. Simply won't continue to last because of those injuries that Kaylor was mentioning. They've basically used 5 different center backs at times this season. That's going to destabilize even the most well-drilled teams. So you get some health. Ian Cameron knows how to put together a unit that can clamp down. Now that you've got your number 1 option back, you've really added on the flanks as well. If you think about like what Davy Mason is doing, the bones of a team that is gonna be in the playoff mix are right in place for Tormenta.
Yeah, I don't have terribly much to add on that. You guys both pretty much nailed it. So
I just want to throw out again, like the Bolu comments. If you want to just watch one match and just constantly watch Chris Heckenberg, just follow him the entire time. I am madly in love with watching him play. He is just a solid watch. So if you're looking for someone that's not just a striker or a center back, and you're looking for incredible just defensive midfielder, he's your guy. He's incredible. Yeah, that was everybody that has not made, that are not in a playoff spot. And there's some other teams that, we don't talk a whole lot about that are in playoff spots. I'm kind of looking at your one Knoxes, maybe your Northern Colorados, which really we should put some more respect on their name. They're not the same hellstorm of years past.
They are so good this year. I think they're legit.
I don't want to give away too much, but they might be sneaking into my favorites to win it this year. They're just so good. Other teams that we aren't talking about much, FC Tulsa. We talked about Indy a little bit. Those are teams that are like right on the bubble that we aren't fully respecting as much as maybe we should. And we aren't talking about them as much, but they're in the playoffs. So sorry about that. Other teams, Phoenix and Colorado, they're kind of their own weird thing that I don't know how to talk about them because they're in the playoffs, but are they? Like what I don't know what to do with that. So there's a lot of teams that are making real runs that we still don't talk about as much because I mean this is a top driven league as every league is. But we especially wanted to give a love to the very, very bottom, and why you should be excited as fans because if you heard for a lot of what we said, your team still has a lot of playoff hope. Most of you who we talked about, so just thought we'd throw that out there. Any USL thoughts, whether it be a team we didn't talk about a lot that you have a burning comment you want to make, or just anything to do with the league, really?
Tangential shout, and I know this is somewhat of the personal, but if you do go and subscribe to Back Yield this month, in the month of June, $1 of that donation, or rather $1 of your subscription is going to go to Top Soccer, which helps to engage disabled people, disabled children with the sport, get them involved, give them a sense of fun and community. So I think it's a really good cause in that front, and you're supporting USL journalism and American soccer journalism as well. So quick shout there.
And if you're like me, you also get 2 free stickers in the mail. Because stickers are everything. All right. Any other USL thoughts from you guys? I watched Legion versus Southern Soccer Academy the other day, and it was one of the best matches I've watched in a while. It was an incredible match, and their left winger, whom I cannot remember to save my life, and I feel awful, but I think she just won the U20 World Cup, and it was ridiculous how good she was. I feel awful for not remembering the name off the top of my head, and I'm a horrible person, but she was incredible. And there's a lot of talent in your W League too. So go watch your local club because they really want you there, and also the talent there is ridiculous.
Jonathan Como, who covers the Roots at Roots blog, was live tweeting one of their games. I can't remember what team they were coming up against, but a player from the Portuguese national team was just playing in a W League game against the Oakland Soul. It's crazy the level of just randomly amazing talent that's on display here. And that's only going to get better with Super League, obviously, but W League right here, right now, if you've got a team in your market, go watch that because that's great soccer.
And because my mouthpiece is bigger on here, Morgan White's not up for goal in the week, and that is a travesty. This is a racer, and I absolutely cannot stand the front office. I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean that, but seriously, she should be up there. All right, that's enough USL talk for the day. No one cares. We're almost an hour 20 in. Alan, final thoughts?
Yeah, that's about it. I don't have any final thoughts. I've learned how to sew. I made some pillows. That's my final thought.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you have any nearby?
I can go get one right now while John talks, but I think it's National Sewing Machine Day, so I thought I would hype that up as well. So, yeah.
That's a great talent that not enough people have.
My grandmother is really good at it, and she can just do anything with it, and it really confuses me on how she does it and not just completely tears her hand. Wow.
That's really impressive. Yeah, if you're on the podcast, get onto the YouTube thing and just see what Alan is doing because this is great stuff.
Impressive. How did you discover it was National Sewing Day, by the way?
My wife sent it to me. She's like, "It's National Sewing Machine Day. You should celebrate."
I love that. John?
Yeah, it's Tuesday. I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson and his movies. So because I live in one of the big cities, I get to get some early access in an indie theater to go see his new one, Asteroid City, on Thursday. So hyped up for that. Yeah, they were actually doing showings introduced by him and Jason Schwartzman, and I wasn't able to get tickets, which was heartbreaking. I know. I got on right when it dropped, but no dice.
So that's awesome though.
Yeah, excited.
There was a movie theater in Birmingham. I don't know if it's still open, but did you guys have the dollar theaters?
I did not. That sounds awesome.
I think I saw Superstar at the dollar theaters.
I saw the most recent, and this tells you how long it's been since I went, but I watched the new Power Rangers movie at the Dollar Theater, which, it was exactly what you wanted it to be. Speaking of, I want to go to a drive-in movie theater again. There was one near where I grew up, and I love that thing.
Such a
Golly.
vibe.
I know. Southern culture, huh? Like, get my pickup truck, go watch a movie that's not that good. I watched the Emoji Movie at one of those bad boys.
Wow, that's great stuff right there.
It was a double showing, and it was the last one. And I looked at the girlfriend at the time. I was like, "Are we staying for this?" And she was like, "We're already here. We've already paid the ticket." And by God, we watched it.
Magic.
Yeah. Let's see. For me, I wasn't alive to see The Hand of God, but I did see The Hand of Messi on Wednesday, and I'm not happy about it. So I am going to be unapologetically the biggest FC Cincinnati fan on the planet in a couple of weeks. So good for me. Let's see, anything else that's going on? Oh, I am currently, so for people who don't know, I do music. I teach music in my free time. That's my job. And I'm handwriting drill right now. So I love that for me. Send prayers. I'm tired of it. So
Get that pieware.
there's only 22 kids. There's no point.
Still get that pieware.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. Also, by the way, the Henny Derby is this week, and please watch. Walkin' 90, I think, has a live show from Richmond, which is really cool. So it's going to be their Juneteenth game anyway, which is incredible. And they're doing the Henny Derby. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's the only reason I wore my Forward Madison kit. It's the only one I own, mainly because I'm taking Forward Madison. I think they're going to win. Spoilers. And then, yeah, just watch. It's incredible. And the people at Walkin' 90, 2 Cents, those guys are also just, they do incredible job, and they grow the game in some of the best way. So check them out and see what the Henny Derby really means, because it's really cool. So yeah, hour 22. I'm going to shut up now because I talk too much. So for
Hey, you're plugging a good thing. You're plugging a good thing.
That's me plugging a good thing. Me talking about the Emoji Movie, not. That did not need
Somebody out there is staying for these last 5 minutes of just absolute drivel every time.
Every single time. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We're going to be having another interview coming up soon with said Southern Soccer Academy. So be on the lookout for that. And Kids Season, check it out. And for the last time tonight, cue Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.